Okay, so now I'm going to show you how Omicron contract verbs. This is the third in the series, right? We've done alpha contracts, epsilon contracts, and now Omicron contracts. This is the oldest actually of the three classes. Okay, and you know that it makes you think it would be the oldest because there are so many adjectives and nouns that end in os in Greek of the second declension type, and the way it is. So the we can't simplify this in the way that we could simplify the way contraction works for the alpha contracts and the epsilon contracts. But what we've done is boil down a whole set of contraction rules to these three that are on the blackboard, and you can see how they work. Just let's go through the rules for a second, and you can understand the consequences of it. So when you have O plus EI, which is the ending of so many forms that you know, or an eta iota subscript, or an oi, they're all going to become oi. Okay, so that means, for example, where you have luo, lues, lue, in EIS and EI, you're going to have ois there. Okay, which looks like optatives. It's pretty disturbing. Okay. And notice that you're losing the contrast between the EI and the OI, okay, and the EI and the eta iota subscript. Everything is becoming OI. So there are a lot of forms that look very similar, and it's tricky at first. The simpler ones, but notice a similar principle involved. When you combine an E or an O vowel, that is either of the thematic vowels, you're going to get OU, okay, which means you lose the distinction between the E and the O in these verb forms. And the same goes for the subjunctive. You're going to get eta or omega. At least it's not the same as the indicative forms, okay, at least in part of the paradigm. We'll see how that works out. But you neutralize the contrast between eta subjunctives and omega subjunctives, and you're going to get the omega. So the O is a sound that dominates these forms in a way that the E's and the epsilons and the alphas do not, and it doesn't let through a lot of variation, and it helps you to understand what forms you're looking at in verbs. Again, this is only in the imperfective aspect system, the present, the imperfect forms of the indicative, the subjunctive, and the optative. Everywhere else, the principal parts of these verbs are as regular as we've seen the principal parts of the two Motley types and the Poyao types. So we're not dealing with a huge amount. So let's look at the indicative, Belisi, the indicative, present indicative active of de lao. The forms that you see are de lo with a circumflex. Oops. Yep. We'll look at the principal parts in a second. De lo, de lois. Okay. Again, this can be an optative too. Okay. We'll show you in a second. And de loi. Okay. So that's because the EI is becoming an OI, right? And in the plural, it's going to be de lumen, and annoyingly consistent. De lumen, the circumflex over the OU. De lute, circumflex over the OU. And de luce rather, possibly movable. Okay, again with the circumflex over the OU. So you've got the advantage of consistency in the plural. Okay, but what's happened is that so many distinctions have collapsed that you can't tell whether de lois and de loi are actually optatives. Right? Not only that, but the singular there is the same as the subjunctive. De lo, de lois, de loi. Remember, because in the rule that we gave you, whether it's an eta with an iota subscript or an omicron iota, or an omega with a, you're going to get OI. Okay, so you're going to get de lo, de lois, de loi in the subjunctive singular, and then in the plural, you're going to see something different. You're going to have de lomen, de lote, and de loci. Okay, you might want to write them down there. Subjunctive and indicative are the same in the singular, but in the subjunctive plural, you get a distinction. Instead of de lumen, de lute, de luce, you're going to have de lomen with an omega, de lote, and See. Yep, exactly. Oops. By the way, this verb comes from an adjective delos, which has no English cognates and means clear or apparent. So the verb delao, which has become the standard verb, means to make something clear, to clarify something. All right, so that's one class of things. Let's look at the optative of these verbs. Okay, you can put it on, make a line and do it on the same screen here. The optative singular, it's going to be deloime, okay, in the first person, delois, and deloi, and then the plural is going to be, you're going to have iota eta optatives. You can have deloye and deloyes, deloye as well, okay, and because the contract verbs show you both. But in the plural, you're going to have deloimen, deloite, deloise, deloyan rather, sorry, in the third person plural. So those forms are not in the plural. They're distinctive. The first person singular form is distinctive, but the second person singular and the third person singular, delois and deloi, can be second and third person indicative, second and third person subjunctive, as well as second and third person operative. This is really collapsing categories.
Yeah.
Okay. We should also take a look at the imperfect indicative forms and maybe a little passive forms. Okay. This messes things up. Maybe we should move to a new page. Let's look at let's say the middle passive present indicative of delao. So there you're going to get delumai in the first person singular. That's not bad. Delumai. And what you get as a result of a whole set of contractions here is the horrible thing, deloi.
How does deloi?
Okay, because you're going to get an eta iota subscript at the end of it, and then you get it. That looks like a third person singular indicative, subjunctive, optative, as well as a second person singular, middle, and passive. Okay, and then you have delutai and so forth. It's delumitha, deluta, delusta, and deluntai. So that's not bad in the plural, but the second person singular form sucks. In terms of the indicative and the imperfect I wanted us to look at, it's a delum, and we can show it on the same, or another one's fine. So imperfect active indicative is going to be, you have your augment. So it's de, loon, O-U-N with a circumflex, de luz, okay, circumflex, and de lu with an acute accent. Oops, those are wrong. That's not really going to have circumflexes. They all have an acute on the eta. My fault. A de luz and a de lu. Right. Okay, and then it's going to be a de lumen, a de luta, and a de lu. Those forms have a circumflex over the OU. The first two, but the others do not. The third one does not. It's a de lu, like the first person singular. Okay, so you can see that again, just to sort of summarize, we neutralize the contrast between the E and the O vowels, between the omicron and the epsilon. So we've got one form into which everything contracts in a case like this. Makes it simpler in some ways, but more difficult because we have so much overlap. I don't think this is a hard form to recognize, but others are going to be difficult. All right, so let's talk about some other forms here. We talked about the optative. I think that's relatively straightforward. The infinitive in the active is delun. Okay, no epsilon iota. You're going to have O-U-N, just consistent with timan, which did not have an iota subscript. Oops, we lost the light here. Darn, hold on, let me put it back on. Sorry for the interruption. In the participles, we've got where again you have the O thematic vowel. The only tricky form is the nominative singular masculine, which is de lone with an omega. circumflex, and then de lusa, de lune, and then the genitive singular of the masculine is de luntas, O-U-N-T-O-S, and so forth. I think these are relatively simple. The middle participle is going to be de lumenos, de lumene, de lumenon, O-U, with an acute on the U, de lumenos, de lumene, and so forth. That's the middle participles. So I don't think there's you're going to run into a lot of problem with these forms, except for the book shows you what happens with the word deloy, which can be 7 different things, and the form delois, which can be 3. Okay, deloy is the nightmare because of the second person singular middle endings that complicate everything. So you have a subjunctive, optative, middle, as well as indicative middle. All right, so it's messy there, but I think you'll be able to handle it. All right, stop there.